You ever notice how the quietly capable ones rarely talk about how they got that way? They just are. Calm in a crisis, resourceful without making a show of it, and they don't flinch when things get tough. Here's a controversial thought. Maybe it's because they grew up in the 1970s. Yeah, back when life wasn't padded with helmets and warnings, and parenting didn't come with manuals or mobile apps. The world was messier, louder, freer, and somehow, that chaos built competence. If you were a 70s kid, you didn't get a trophy just for showing up. You learned to fix your bike with duct tape, made it home before the streetlights, and actually had to memorize phone numbers. It wasn't glamorous, but it shaped you. That raw, unfiltered 1970s lifestyle quietly taught resilience, grit, and self-reliance. Without realizing it, you became a doer, not a complainer. You became one of the quietly capable. So why does that matter now? Because in a world obsessed with instant validation and digital noise, those who grew up in the 1970s, teenagers in the 70s, Gen Jonesers, baby boomers, carry a rare strength. You didn't grow up on likes or retweets, you grew up on learning the hard way. This video will break down how that unique, analog upbringing created a generation of quietly capable people, and why your story matters more than ever today. Stick around. This journey through 1970s nostalgia and hard-earned life lessons just might change how you see your past and your power. Learning independence. Early. The 1970s as a training ground. Back in the 70s, kids weren't micromanaged, they were trusted. A 70s teenager didn't need a GPS to get around. They just got on a bike and rode. No cell phones, no check-ins, just be home by dinner. That kind of freedom wasn't just fun, it was formative. It planted the seeds of self-reliance early, shaping a generation that knew how to figure things out without waiting for permission. Growing up in the 1970s meant learning to solve problems without being handed the answers. Remember when losing your house key meant you had to get creative? 70s kids did. Maybe they climbed through a window or went to a neighbor's, but they handled it. That kind of real-world trial and error built quiet confidence. It's the kind of skill that's hard to teach today in a world dominated by tracking apps and helicopter parenting. But that pre-internet life taught you that it's okay to stumble, as long as you get back up with a new plan. Teen life before the internet wasn't about scrolling, it was about doing, fixing things, exploring, failing, trying again. Those 70s youth experiences baked resilience into your DNA. There wasn't always an adult around, and that was the point. That freedom wasn't neglect, it was trust. And what did that trust teach you? That you're capable. And that quiet capability, it didn't just show up one day. It was forged in the fire of childhood in the 70s. And it's exactly what leads into the next critical piece of the puzzle. In the 1970s, responsibility wasn't something kids earned, it was something they inherited. If you were a 70s kid, you probably had chores that actually mattered. We're not talking about pushing buttons on a dishwasher. We're talking about mowing the lawn, changing the oil, babysitting your siblings, or cooking dinner when your parents were working late. This wasn't just helping out, it was about keeping the house running. 70s parenting had a simple message: pull your weight. There was no allowance for every little thing, and no gold stars for doing what was expected. If you forgot to take the trash out, it stayed there, and so did the consequences. And while that might sound harsh to today's ears, there was something powerful about knowing your contribution mattered. That's how the quietly capable generation was built, by doing things that actually had impact. The 1970s lifestyle didn't separate kids from real life, it invited them into it. Today, a lot of teenagers are still figuring out what adulting means, but teenagers in the 70s were already halfway there. That emotional growth didn't come from lectures, it came from living. It came from real trust and real stakes. And once you've learned that kind of responsibility early on, you don't forget it. By the way, if any of this is striking a chord, go ahead and tap like, or subscribe if you're nodding along. Just a thought. Anyway, all that toughness wasn't just about chores. It was about learning how to bounce back. And that resilience? It showed up most clearly when things went wrong. Boredom was a gift, the creative power of an unscheduled life. Before smartphones and endless streaming, boredom was a regular visitor in the average 70s household. But here's the twist, that boredom was actually a secret superpower. Growing up in the 1970s meant long afternoons with nothing to do, which usually turned into building forts, drawing comics, or inventing games in the backyard. Without the internet, 70s kids became natural-born creators. That unstructured time sparked imagination, and imagination breeds capability. Think about it. When there's no app to distract you, your brain gets busy in the best way. Kids in the 70s turned cardboard boxes into spaceships, made mixtapes on cassettes, and recorded pretend radio shows on tape recorders. That DIY creativity didn't just entertain, it taught resourcefulness. It made you realize that you could make something out of nothing. And in a world that now relies heavily on curated content, that old-school inventiveness is a rare and valuable skill. This kind of freedom to get bored and explore built a strong inner world. It's probably why so many 70s kids grew into adults with vivid imaginations and a practical edge. You didn't need to be entertained, you entertained yourself. And that kind of mental muscle? It's still flexing today, often in ways you don't even notice. But what happens when creativity meets adversity? That's where things get even more interesting. Tough love and grit, the 70s approach to emotional growth. In the 70s, emotional support didn't come wrapped in soft words and therapy buzzwords. It came in the form of, "You'll be fine," or "walk it off." Now that might sound cold today, but for a 70s teenager, it built something deep, emotional grit. You learned to process things inwardly, find your footing, and keep going. That kind of emotional growth wasn't coddled, it was earned. And believe it or not, that's a big part of why so many from that era are quietly capable today. When you got your heart broken in the 70s, you didn't post a cryptic message online. You maybe talked to a friend, wrote in a notebook, or just sat with the feeling. Growing up without technology meant sitting in silence sometimes, and learning how to hear your own voice. That's where resilience was born, in those quiet, uncomfortable moments where you had to deal instead of distract. It wasn't always easy, but it built a calm center that still holds steady decades later. And here's the thing, those small emotional muscles you built back then, they turned into real strength. You didn't need constant validation to feel okay. You learned to trust yourself, to navigate setbacks without falling apart. Sure, the 70s culture didn't hand out emotional toolkits, but it gave you the chance to build your own. And just when life started to throw real punches, another key skill began to shine, one that every 70s kid had, even if they didn't know it. Problem solving without Google, the rise of the quietly capable mind. If you were growing up in the 1970s, you didn't have the luxury of Googling a solution. Something broke? You either fixed it or figured out how to work around it. That's how quietly capable people are made, not with hacks and shortcuts, but with trial, error, and persistence. Whether it was rewinding a tangled cassette tape with a pencil or tuning a TV with rabbit ears, 70s kids developed a kind of hands-on intelligence that's tough to teach today. You learned by doing, not watching. If your bike chain fell off, there wasn't a YouTube tutorial. You got your hands dirty, asked a neighbor, or just kept trying until something clicked. That kind of resilience in the 70s built confidence. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet, steady kind that says, "I'll figure it out." And the truth is, that mindset still works. In today's noisy world, those who know how to pause, think, and solve without panic are rare and powerful. That's why so many 70s kids now seem unshakable in moments of chaos. They've been training for it since childhood, when answers weren't just a tap away. That self-taught problem solving wasn't just about fixing objects, it was about shaping character. And when you combine that with all the freedom, emotional strength, and real-world responsibility you picked up along the way, well, it starts to become clear why this generation might just be the most quietly capable one of all. So now that we've taken this trip down memory lane, ask yourself, how much of who you are today was forged in those simpler, wilder, pre-internet days? The truth is, growing up in the 1970s wasn't always easy, but it was real. It shaped you with silent lessons, resilience, creativity, emotional grit, and a kind of quiet strength that today's world desperately needs. You didn't just grow up, you were built. And here's the challenge. How much of that quietly capable spirit are you still using today? Are you still solving problems instead of avoiding them? Still trusting your gut when things get hard? still tapping into that unshakable sense of, I've got this, even when life throws curveballs? The 1970s may feel like a distant memory, but the tools you gained back then are still sharp. All that matters now is, are you still putting them to work? If this resonated with you, even just one line of it, stick around. Subscribe, turn on those notifications, and keep digging into what made you strong. This isn't just nostalgia, it's a reminder of your roots and your edge. And trust me, the more you reconnect with that 70s resilience, the more unstoppable you'll be in this chaotic world.